Hello, Lisa here. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to anti-haul number 12. If you are new to anti-hauls, hello, welcome. If you're new to my channel, extra special welcome. Let me tell you how my anti-hauls work. Essentially, what I like to do in these videos is share with you guys the things I am definitely, probably, almost certainly not going to buy. And at the same time, I like to share with you what from my collection I like instead, or I like better, or kind of scratches that itch for me. I am changing things up a little bit this month, so I'm going to be sharing with you not only the things that I'm not going to buy, but also some decks I'm not keeping. Now, these may or may not be things that I talk about in other videos, but I thought it'd be a really nice way to circle back, particularly since I review a lot of decks. I thought it'd be nice to circle back and let you know which ones aren't working out for me, which ones are going to be passed along, and maybe I won't get to everything, but I think it'd be really fun to just kind of give you an update on those things. There's always a way for me to circle back and let you know when I'm loving something, but I hadn't quite figured out a way to circle back and let you know when something's not working. And this is one of those ways. So I hope you enjoy this new category I'm adding to anti-hauls, and that is where we're going to begin today with decks I'm not keeping. So the first one of these that I want to talk about is the Green Witch Tarot. I decided to rehome this deck, even though I very recently purchased it. So if you don't know the story, I purchased the Green Witch Tarot during my birthday month because I had a store credit and I'd been really curious about it, and a certain somebody mentioned it during a helping you say yes to the deck, actually a couple certain somebodies, and I got really excited about it, wanted to check it out in person, brought it home, worked with it. Didn't get along with it. It's a beautiful, beautiful deck, and I really, really wanted to love it, but in the end, I realized it was competing for a space in my heart with my Druidcraft Tarot. So you guys know I have a long-standing love for the Druidcraft Tarot. It's why I chose this deck for helping you say yes to the deck as my main one. Now this is my original copy, which I have trimmed. And I will say I really, really want to retrim this, which is another reason I picked this for helping you say yes to the deck, because I want to trim it so that these bottom borders are completely off, and I think I want to use a smaller corner rounder. But in the end, I love the witchiness and the kind of earthy feel of the Druidcraft. Because I love the earthiness of this deck so much, I felt like it was really competing for space in my collection with that Green Witch Tarot. And I knew that when given the choice between the Druidcraft or the Green Witch, I would definitely choose the Druidcraft to work with on any given day. So that is why I decided ultimately not to keep the Green Witch Tarot. It is already en route to its new home. At least I think it is, because I didn't see it in my drawer. So yeah. Side note, some of you guys ask how I rehome my decks, and I figured I'd throw this into this video because I do talk about it periodically, but it's good to remind you guys how that process looks for me. So typically I will put decks in a purgatory drawer for a while. And then once it's sat there for a while, if I haven't found myself missing that deck or wanting to reach for that deck, eventually I will then rehome that deck. And the way I like to rehome decks, there's a few different ways that are my go-tos. I will occasionally sell decks on eBay. Very rarely, because I'm way too lazy for that. But most of the time, I will eventually list them in the Supportive Tarot Facebook group. We have a weekly Tarot Trade Tuesday event, and I'll list my decks to be rehomed in there. But that is one of my favorite ways. I will always check with my friends first in case there's something I'm rehoming that they want, or check with Peggy, that sort of thing. And then the other thing I'll do, because I live in Canada, it's often not worth it to anybody else to buy or trade for one of my mass market decks. So a lot of times mass market decks, I store those separately, and every once in a while I will take a load of those over to a local metaphysical store, and usually I can exchange them for store credit, which is great. So those are some of my favorite ways, but you can also look at Craigslist. There are also trading and selling groups on Facebook you can look at. There's other ways, checking with friends and family, like I said. Sometimes I will donate a deck to like a thrift store or something like that, but typically my first go-to is my own Facebook group, because why not? But I do go quite long stretches between deciding I'm going to purgatory a deck, like just put it away and think about it for a while, and when I actually get around to rehoming it. I'm currently, or I guess I should say recently, just did a big round of that where I finally posted my list again in the group. And so my purgatory drawer now has some space in it again, but that is typically how I go about it. So if you're curious about that, that is usually what I do. Okay, other decks that are not staying in my collection. The Animal Love Oracle, written and illustrated by Nadine Gordon-Taylor. I did a walkthrough of this deck, and it is really, really beautiful. I love the fact that the animals here are so beautifully illustrated. There's a lot of vibrancy in this particular artwork. But the thing about animal decks in me, well, two things about this deck that really sort of ended up being kind of deal breakers for me personally. Some of the cards are landscape and some are portrait, which is something that I just personally don't like that much. But then the other thing is that I already do have a Animal Oracle deck that I absolutely love. And that is the Animalkin Oracle. If you haven't heard me talk about the Animalkin Oracle deck before, I'm very sorry. I've been remiss because I love this deck. Now, my box looks a little different than the one you'll find currently on Hay House because they've changed the box design, I believe, and they also changed the back of the cards design. But I love my copy. I've had this one for quite a while. This is what my backings look like. And this is the style of this deck. Really big borders, but the borders sort of color-wise are in theme with the artwork of the card. But what I especially love about this deck is I love that you get the name of the animal, so it says crab here, and then you also get a keyword, so it says trust. Now there is more to this deck besides just the name of the animal and the keyword that I love, one of which is I love the guidebook. And I also love that there is a system. So you do have all the elements represented in various suits throughout this deck, so you can work with that system if you like. I also love that there's a lot of cards. There's 64 cards in here. I just threw the box on the ground. Hold on. 65. I lied. There's 65 cards. It's nice and chunky. It gives me a good range of keywords. I really, really enjoy this deck. So I have yet to get an Animal Oracle deck or find an Animal Oracle deck that can basically knock this one off of its throne. So it stays. And other Oracle decks that come into my collection often don't, because I don't feel like I need a lot of different Animal Oracle decks. So because I have one I love so much, most of the others can't compete. So this one is not one that I'm ending up keeping, even though I did review it and do a walkthrough of it here on the channel. So yeah. Not staying. The next deck that I am not keeping that I had done a review of or a walkthrough of here on the channel is the Dreamscape Oracle deck. This is the original indie version. This was sent to me for review, and it's really, really pretty. In fact, I look at it now and I'm still like, oh gosh, Lisa, it's so pretty. The gilding on these cards is just gorgeous. I don't know if you'll see the flash. It is, oh, look at that. Oh, it's like a rainbow gilding. It's really, really, really pretty. I thoroughly enjoy this deck. However, it is one of those decks where I find that it has more of a title situation than keywords. So I find myself reliant on the guidebook, and for whatever reason, this one, you know what? This one just feels, it feels a little grown up for me. Like, I know I'm an adult. That's not what I mean. I don't know how else to say it. It feels kind of classy and kind of beautiful and just kind of, I feel like this is wasted on me. Maybe that's a better way to say it. I know, I don't know how to word it properly, but it just doesn't, it ends up not being something I'm excited to reach for. It's not my aesthetic, okay? I know that I say that kind of thing a lot, but it's just not my aesthetic. I tried to think of something in my collection that's like this that I reach for instead, and I couldn't think of anything. I couldn't think of anything in my collection that this competes with. I just realized it's not my thing. And I think sometimes that's what it is, right? Sometimes we think, oh, I've got something like this, or I don't need this, or whatever, because I've got a bunch of other things like it. In this case, I just realized it just wasn't for me, which doesn't happen to me very, very often. But I knew, because it's just ended up being a dust collector. I did the walkthrough, I worked with it a bit here and there, and then it just sat and sat and sat and sat. And then I put it in purgatory, and I forgot it existed until I was making a list of decks that I had to rehome, and I found it in the drawer, and I was like, oh, you were a thing, which, nothing against the artwork or anything on this deck. I just realized I wasn't going to use it, so it better go off and find a new home. Okay, the next one is the Smith Tiny White Edition Tarot. Now, I believe, I could be wrong, I don't have my calendar in front of me, but I'm pretty sure you will have already seen my RWS deck collection video at the time that you see this video. However, essentially, I kind of knew right when I got this that it wasn't going to be staying. Like, it was just, I just knew. I did the flip through of the deck. I think this is a really cute version of a Rider-Waite-Smith. It's essentially a Rider-Waite-Smith clone. I love the backings on these cards, by the way. They're so pretty, and they just remind me of Christmas. I know they're not. It's like red roses. I don't know. It's the colors. I think it's just the red and the green on the white. It's so cute. Here's the thing. I don't know what it is, but I don't like the black eyes. That's literally my one beef. And also the fact that I don't read with Rider-Waite-Smith style decks like classic Rider-Waite-Smith clones very often. And so I have limited space in my collection, or I have in my mind. You know, there's a term, I feel like I'm just like talking about Hannah Louise Poston a lot lately, but there's a term she uses about her mind palace in some of her older videos. I don't know if she's used that term in a long time. She talks about not having enough space in her mind palace for too much makeup. It's a makeup thing. And I think that's kind of how it is. It's like I have physical space, technically, although even that is limited. But I only have so much space in my mind for certain types of decks. And when it comes to Rider-Waite-Smith clone decks, I only have a certain amount of space in my head for Rider-Waite-Smith clones. Because if I'm thinking of working with a Rider-Waite-Smith or a clone, first of all, that doesn't happen very often. And when it happens, I want to be excited to reach for that particular version of the Rider-Waite-Smith or that particular clone. And so by the same creator, the one that I've decided to keep, at least for now, is the Ganeshian Village Tarot, which is a little smaller. Like, it's like cute. Look, it's so cute. So I really like this deck. The walkthrough for both of these decks is, I think, in the same video, question mark? I don't remember. I'll try to remember. I'll have everything linked. Guys, I hate tuck boxes so much. Hold on. Quick trick. Slide something under that flap and then pry it open gently, and then you probably won't tear it. The little Ganeshian Village, it's also a Rider-Waite-Smith clone, but it's all these little Ganeshes. Now, this particular version is sold out, but there's another version that has, like, I think, special sparkliness on it or something. I don't know. Go check it out. I'll have a link to the shop where these are sold down below. The cardstock's really, really nice. This is a really cute size, and it's a really cute style of Rider-Waite-Smith. So I thought this one was really, really cute. And I have a Ganesh Oracle deck. So, ooh, I'm throwing the cards at myself. So this is one that I definitely want to keep for now. So again, I have limited space to consider keeping Rider-Waite-Smith clones, and this one won out over the Smith Tiny as far as which ones I want to hold on to. So this one is staying, but I did decide that I wasn't going to be keeping the Smith Tiny. There are two more decks in this category of decks I'm not keeping, and neither of which I have currently in front of me to show you. The first one of those, and they're both by the same artist, they are the Pearls of Wisdom Tarot, the Gold Edition by Roxy Art, roxyartwork.ca, I believe. I'll have a link down below. And the other one is the Oracle deck by the same creator called the Sacred Feminine Oracle. Now, I did a giveaway on the channel of the Sacred Feminine Oracle, so that is already winging its way across the world to its new home. And the and the Pearls of Wisdom, I love that deck. I really genuinely love it. I know that with my eyes the way that they are, it's too detailed of a deck and too small of a form factor for me to get effective use out of. So when I was thinking of like what I have in my collection that's like similar, that gives me that same kind of vibe, because I don't currently have the larger version of that deck. I do hope to get it at some point because I think it's a really, really unique deck with tons of symbolism. It's just packed full of symbols, and me as an intuitive reader, I love that. But the small one was just too small. The only other deck I can think of in my collection that gives me that same kind of vibe is the Bonefire Tarot. Now, these are not at all the same, but the Bonefire Tarot has kind of a similar busy quality to the artwork, and that is something that I really enjoy about this deck. In fact, it's one of the things I love the most about it, and yet I know it's the kind of thing that can make it a bit of a deal breaker for some people, and I think that the Pearls of Wisdom is the same kind of way. It's got so much happening, and visually it's so stimulating. And then, of course, the Pearls of Wisdom has lots of like rune associations and all kinds of other stuff to sort of pull you in. And I love that. I just want it bigger. And she does actually sell a bigger version of it. So I'm kind of got that loosely on my wish list to pick up the bigger version at some point. But until then, the original just isn't going to work for me. So that one is going to get passed along. But it's just literally a form factor size issue. But I love it otherwise. So that's kind of a weird one to try to talk about because really impressed with the deck. I think it's going to be a great working deck. It's just, again, not the right size. So the Bonefire Tarot scratches the itch for the Pearls of Wisdom, the bigger version. But when it comes to the Sacred Feminine Oracle, the deck I have in my collection that scratches that itch. Now, the Sacred Feminine Oracle is beautiful. It's still Roxy's artwork, so it's really gorgeous and swirly and magic-y, and it's got this really lovely Divine Feminine vibe. But for me, that didn't work because the words were on the back. And I think I even mentioned that during my initial flip through and kind of like first impressions. But I did around, like, also recently get a really beautiful feminine energy oracle deck that I am obsessed with, and that is the Goddess on Earth Oracle by Lisa Lavart. Oh my gosh, this deck is amazing. I love it so much. It just really touched a part of me that a deck like this I never thought could touch in me. That sounded really weird the way I said it, but like awaken to love. Like the keywords on these cards are gorgeous. The guidebook is out of this world. The quality of the deck itself is incredible. It's just really, really great. I love it a lot. Okay? Okay. And that's saying something because I've been really picky about divine feminine and goddess oriented style decks because I have my Goddess Oracle by Sophia Marashinsky and Harana Janto. Where is it? Where are you? You're not where you're supposed to be. Where are you? Hello? Oh, it's behind me. So this is the deck. I'm just gonna, it's nice sitting over here because I can just grab some things. I mean, most of my tarot is like that way, but still, I've got oracle decks behind me. This deck is the deck that always scratches the itch whenever I'm tempted by an oracle deck or whenever I end up rehoming a goddess oracle deck or divine feminine oracle deck. It's always because I have this one. And because I have this one, it's a really hard deck. Like it's a hard act to follow in my collection for oracle decks. For goddess oracle decks or divine feminine because I have that and it's one that I love so much. This Goddess on Earth, no problem. It can like go head to head with that goddess oracle. It's so much depth and richness, and I have such a love affair with that deck. I'll try to link my walkthrough of it in the cards since I'm waxing philosophical so that you can go watch all of my first impressions and thoughts and gushing and all of that stuff there. But love it. It's working beautifully. I've used it in several different ways and it's so good. It's so good. All right, that wraps up the decks I'm not going to keep. Let's now talk about some mass market decks that I'm not going to buy. I've been making some subtle changes to how I do my anti-hauls because there's other videos I do where I talk about things that are coming out and that I'm kind of thinking about and all this kind of thing. I've started to find myself shifting my anti-hauls to talking more about the things that genuinely really, really, really tempted me and that I kind of talked myself out of. I'm not always successful in that, but most of the decks I talk about in these anti-hauls you'll find have really tempted me, unless I really just need to talk about one that didn't. You know what I mean? So, but in my hot takes video series, I now have an opportunity to talk about the things that there's no way they're going to be for me. So now I'm kind of trying to reserve the decks that like I really thought about, almost bought, went back and forth on, eventually talked myself out of. That's what I'm trying to include here. So you're going to see some things here that I maybe previously expressed lots of interest in and then suddenly realize, no, you know what? It's not for me. The first one of these I want to talk about is the Green Witch Oracle. And I had to really, really talk myself out of this one because it's really pretty. I feel like it would match well with a bunch of decks. I've seen a bunch of people talking about it. It looks gorgeous. I love the overall aesthetic of this deck. But something I've had to learn about myself and that I have to constantly remind myself is that I am not the kind of person who is going to get a lot of use out of plant and herb-based decks. And this one's very plant, herb, vegetable, whatever, based deck. It looks really well done, and it was really tempting me, and I was so close to hitting the buy button so many times, and I think it's really easy with mass market decks, especially because they're more affordable in general, and it's just easier for me to be impulsive where mass market decks are concerned. But one thing I learned about myself spending my birthday credit at a local metaphysical shop and buying just a bunch of mass market stuff is that when I'm impulsive like that, when I like just go, oh, well, it's affordable, so I'll buy it, I almost always end up moving it out of my collection later because I bought it because it was affordable and pretty or whatever. You know, whatever drew me to it, the affordability was a factor. And I find that when affordability is a primary factor in my decision, like, oh, I've got an extra bit of money or I've got this store credit or whatever, when that is the thing that tips me over the edge of something that I previously decided I wasn't going to get, I find that often it's not that I regret the decision because it's always cool to get to work with a deck up close and personal, but it's definitely more like those are the times when I often find that I make decisions that aren't ultimately the best for me. Because I think sometimes that idea of like, oh, I would pay even more money for this tells you how much you really like something versus, oh, I've got extra money or it's on sale or this or that and therefore I want it. Does that make any sense? If you relate to what I'm saying, comment down below, let us know if this makes sense because I feel like this is a trap that we fall into a lot where it's like, oh, there's a deal, or I actually did this recently with the Macabre Tarot. I discovered it during one of my hot takes videos. And as I was talking about how it wasn't necessarily for me, I saw that it was on this ridiculous discount to pre-order it. So it was like $13 Canadian or something. And so I pre-ordered it. It's technically still on pre-order. And so we'll see how that plays out. But definitely I bought that because it was on sale. Oftentimes when I do that, I later find out that deck doesn't work for me. So that's just my piece of what I've learned, I guess, about myself. Some of you may find that it applies to you. Some of you may not, but I figured I'd share it. I don't know if it's helpful, but there you go. Essentially what I figured out is that I have a plant-based deck. When I was talking about the Green Witch Oracle, let's drag it back, Lisa. Talking about the Green Witch Oracle, the mass market version, I have a plant-based deck that is really well done, has a very meaty guidebook with a lot for me to sink my teeth into, a lot to learn, and it's beautiful, and I like the cardstock, and. And because I have this deck, I feel like I don't necessarily, look how pretty the bag is, but because I have this deck, I don't necessarily feel like I need any other plant-based oracle decks right now. So this is, in this deck, the Plant Spirit Oracle. This is by Dana O'Driscoll, who is the creator of the Tarot of Trees. And this is just a really, really gorgeous, gorgeous deck. And it's a very usable deck for me because it has not just the name of the plant on the cards, but lots of good keywords. And again, the book with this deck is really, really well done. And because the book is so well done, and because there's keywords on the card, so I can just use this deck right out of the box, I just find this to be really usable and really pretty. Look at the backings. This is such a gorgeous deck. If you can still get your hands on this, and I think that you can, it's an indie deck, well worth the price. I actually got this in a tarot trade, like in a deck trade, but I think I probably would have bought it eventually otherwise. It's really beautiful. These cards are big. Like here's the standard Smith Tiny deck next to it. So you can see they're bigger. They're like oracle card size. They do feel kind of big for shuffling, but they're so lovely. Come in this gorgeous like deck-sized box. Fits perfectly in a standard Peggy bag. Ooh, Anyway, okay, enough about that. The next mass market tarot deck that I have decided, embracing myself. I hope I don't change my mind on this because I'm going to look really silly, but I have gone back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and I have decided I am not going to buy the Cirque de Tarot. This deck looks so beautiful. The art style has completely captured my imagination. The world building in the deck, I've been using that word a lot lately in my videos, and I think it's because in my mind, that's what a successful themed deck does for me, is it kind of builds a world that I want to visit. That's what the Mons Tarot does so successfully. Lots of decks do this very, very successfully. So I'm not like picking favorites, but I am saying the Cirque de Tarot seems to do a really beautiful job world building. Like you really feel like you're at a circus, and not just any circus. You feel like you're at like a Cirque du Soleil style circus, something very artsy and highbrow and beautiful, and I can see it in my mind. And it's got this kind of quirky, surreal vibe to it. It's really alluring. It's really, really alluring. And this, I could totally see this being one that later I backpedal on. But I think what I finally convinced myself of is that as beautiful as it is, and as much as I appreciate how well done it appears to be, I don't reach for, nor have I ever felt particularly called to circusy themed or amusement park themed decks. I don't know how else to say that, but to just say that I feel like when I want to go into a world, when I imagine what kind of world I'd like to visit through my practice of tarot or oracle, I think of the Mons Tarot and a playful, vibrant world, or the Happy Tarot, or the Playful Heart Tarot, that kind of thing. Or I think about something very naturey, like the one that scratches my itch that I chose to show, which is the Forest of Enchantment Tarot. Now this one pulls me into a world that is storybook and magic and nature and kind of fairy in its way. It pulls me into a world where lots of things are possible, but there's something about this particular world that invites me into it in a way that kind of just pushes a lot of the right buttons for me. And I think what attracted me to the Cirque de Tarot is that it feels like it's inviting me into a world that I desperately want to visit, but it's the kind of world where I feel like I'd want to visit like a couple times a year at most. You know what I mean? Like I love going to the Cirque du Soleil, but I can go years between a trip to the Cirque du Soleil and be okay. It's not something that I will be super sad if I don't get to visit. You know what I mean? Whereas a playful world or a storybook world or like a naturey world, I think I would miss that quicker, if that makes any sense. So I feel like some of my reasoning feels a little thin, and there's a chance that, you know, the more that I see the Cirque du Tarot as it's out in the world, I might change my mind. But for now, I feel like I'm content without it. And so I'm going to try to stay in that content place for now, because I have so many beautiful things and so many worlds I can visit in all of my beautiful decks that I don't feel like I need that circus world. But it's different. And it is the first Llewellyn tarot that's like the Llewellyn set kind of tarot that's really, really excited me since the Forest of Enchantment. This was the last one that really, really grabbed my attention and my imagination and really excited me. And so that's definitely something I'm paying attention to. But for now, I have successfully talked myself out of needing it, at least right this minute. The next deck that I have successfully talked myself out of that I'm not going to buy is the Eternal Seeker Oracle. Oh, this one really tempted me. It's really cool. It's really different. It's really pretty. I believe this one is put out by Red Feather Schiffer. I thought it was just really, really well done. It captured my attention. It felt like a departure from what we see in mass market oracle decks. It was really, really exciting. I was so close to like wanting to like order this and buy this. And then I found out that the first 22 cards of this oracle deck are based on Tarot's major arcana. And I've recently realized, like really recently realized, that that is a bit of a deal breaker for me when it comes to oracle decks. Because I have a large collection of tarot decks, and I do have a couple of majors only tarot decks. And if I wanted to work with a tarot deck and then work with a majors only tarot deck beside it, that's what I would do. The reason I like pairing tarot and oracle is so I can have a totally different kind of energy over here to pair with tarot energy that I feel like I know and love and like relate to in a particular way. But I like mixing those two sort of energies together. I very rarely will put tarot next to tarot. I have done it and I've enjoyed doing it, and in certain contexts it's amazing. But I'm actually more likely to double up oracle decks than I am to double up tarot decks, just in general. And so I realized that when there's an oracle deck that is based on the Tarot Major Arcana and does that in a way that I feel like once I see it, I can't unsee it, that can be a bit of a deal breaker. And in fact, there is a deck I have that is based on the tarot in general, and but I feel like it does it in a way where it doesn't distract or pull away from me. I feel like I'm sidetracking myself a lot because there's decks behind me that I can reach for, but it is true. The Sacred Creators Oracle, I didn't know this when I first got it, but the Sacred Creators Oracle does align with the tarot, and you can really see it in the first 22 cards. But because this is not a visual deck, I don't know how else to describe this. Because this deck is very, very unique and it's not as visual, like it's much more about the energy of each card and what the cards say. I feel like because of that, this doesn't feel like tarot and tarot when I pair it with tarot. That was a really awkward sentence, but it just doesn't. And so because it doesn't, it works really well. But a step just slightly to either direction on this one and it wouldn't have worked. And I know that. And there's actually been a couple of decks that I was thinking about buying or backing that I didn't because I found out that it had that major arcana element to it. So, lesson I've learned, if an oracle deck is based entirely or mostly on the tarot's major arcana or has a big chunk of its cards devoted to tarot in that way, I'm unlikely to want it because I could just use a tarot instead. I feel like I'm being very wordy as I'm filming this video, so it may be long. I mean, you know, you guys are probably used to it by now. If you're new to the channel, welcome. I make long videos, lengthy videos. I can't stop talking. This is why I love YouTube, because I can just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. It's great. Anyway, the deck that scratches the itch for the Eternal Seeker Oracle, the one that kind of feels like it had a similar energy to me, and that's where I'm going to leave it, is the Messenger Oracle by Raven Phelan. This is what the backings look like. Now, I got to tell you guys, I'm really, really excited. This actually just came up recently at the time I'm filming this in my Supportive Tarot Facebook group. There's another deck coming out by Raven Phelan called the Seeker Oracle, and it does appear that the backings of the deck are the same. Now, I could be wrong. I'm going to have to look it up again and make sure, so please don't go on just my word. If the backings are the same, that means I could combine them for a mega deck, which has nothing to do with this video at all, but I just thought I'd share it because I thought it was pretty exciting. This deck is so pretty. It's not based on the tarot, but it has like a tarot size, and there's enough cards that it reads really well all by itself or paired with other things. Love the keywords, love the artwork, love it. The older version of this I didn't use very much, but I have used this newer version quite a bit, and I love it. That means we're now on to indie decks I'm not going to buy. Okay, the first indie deck I have almost tipped over the edge of buying and have managed to reel it back in is the Iris Oracle. Now, I have the temptation for this deck entirely to blame on Candy of Candy Soul and Soil, who we had on for a Helping You Say Yes to the Deck episode, and who was desperately trying to show me how beautiful this deck was so that I would want to buy it, because she's evil. Just kidding. Candy's amazing and lovely, and I think she's wonderful. But once I got finished with that Helping You Say Yes to the Deck episode, I started looking up the deck, and she's right. Oh man, it is astounding how beautiful and poignant and like pokey it is in all the right ways. If you want a deck that's going to like tug at your feels and kind of like help you dip into the shadow, oh, it is beautiful. And it has got this like messy, sketchy kind of quality, which normally I don't get along with, but worked so well for it. And I told her, even I think we might have been off camera actually off recording when I told her this, but I felt like it would compete too hard with my Reclaim Oracle, which I love so dearly. And I told her that, and then I immediately second guessed myself and was like, yeah, but you could have more decks like that, Lisa, in your collection. Like you could love them all equally. It'll be fine. We can have more than one thing that's kind of the same. And then I looked, and my sad little emotional baggage patch on my Reclaim Oracle bag, and I looked at how sad and lonely it would be if I had another deck to compete with it, and I felt so bad. I realized that I don't want anything competing with this deck. I should show the deck, not just the bag, sorry. The Reclaim Oracle by Marion Constantin stole my heart. I saw this on Kickstarter and noped. I've talked about this before. I noped out of this deck. I was like, oh my gosh, that art style is so not for me. I've said this before. I will tell you right now, I now absolutely love this specific style from Marion. But at first glance, I was like, it's monochromatic, it's kind of messy looking, it's so not for me. But then I got a little closer and I started looking at the keywords. And I mean, you've heard me say it before if you've seen me talk about this deck before. This deck is so emotive and poignant, and it pokes at you in all the right ways. It does all the things that Iris Oracle does. But I've already bonded with this one, and I don't want this one competing with anything else in my collection. And I am completely biased, I will admit, because this deck, again, it just completely stole my heart. I've used it so much since I got it, and I have a lot of decks. The fact that I reach for things outside of regular deck rotations and videos and things, but reach for it because I just want to. I just want to hold it. I just want to work with it. I just want to journal with it. I just want to pull a card for myself with it. And it's not that that's rare, because I do that a fair amount, but doing it a lot with one particular deck is a little bit more rare because I have so many beautiful things that I love. And I just didn't want anything competing for time with this. Like, I want to keep using it as much as I am and loving it as much as I am. And she's working on a tarot, by the way, a little insider tip for you. She's working on a tarot. And I have to show you this because I don't remember if I've shown it or how I've shown it before, but look at the beautiful handmade artwork that Marion made just for me after I did my video. Now, full disclosure, I bought this deck with my own money, right? But I just gushed and gushed, and she sent me a really lovely note on the back of this piece of artwork. But the fact that she made one of her figures riding a unicorn just for me, this is probably one of my favorite pieces of mail I've ever gotten. I have a couple pieces that feel like this to me. This one's always on display. She lives up here. It's so cute. I love it. It totally was such a cool thing to, anyways. Okay, I'm going to stop. I can't stop talking. Can't stop talking today. And I'm making this video really late at night. You know what I've learned about myself? If I wait to film a video until it's way past my bedtime, I just can't shut up. That's what I've learned about myself. I should make more videos at this time of the night. I'm sure you guys would love it. Okay. Anyways. So that's why I can't get the Iris Oracle, because I love the Reclaim Oracle so much. That was the punchline. It just took me a while to get there. I have to sneeze. Okay, moving on. The next deck that tempted me that I saw somewhat recently was the Tarot de Luz, or I think that translates to the tarot deck of light or something along those lines. I saw this deck during a walkthrough on Bonnie Old Soul Mermaid's channel. If you are not following Bonnie Old Soul Mermaid, she has this lovely, gentle, warm energy. I think you would really enjoy her channel. She's just a nice channel to visit. You know what I mean? You ever encounter channels like that where or YouTube channels like that where you just go and watch a video and they're just lovely. Bonnie's just lovely. Anyways, she did a walkthrough on this Tarot de Luz, and I was like hovering. You know, have you ever done this? Actually, I know some of you guys have done this because you've confessed this to me when you've done this on my videos. But you're watching a video and you're not even through the whole video, and you've already in another tab opened up the buy page for whatever it is you're watching, and you're like, I'm just gonna buy this. I'm just gonna buy this. I don't even have to finish the walkthrough. But with this Tarot de Luz, I was just watching it, and there was something so kind of like otherworldly and like kind of old and quirky and fun feeling about it. It made me think of like historical tarot decks with a twist, like that kind of playful but also vintagey. I don't know how to describe it. You just go check out the video. I'll try to remember to have the video linked below. The deck that I basically talked myself out of it for, the deck in my collection that I realized I have, so I don't need the Tarot de Luz, is the Tarot of Musterberg. Now, I did anti-haul. I think I anti-hauled this deck. Is it going to focus? Here we go. Way back in the day, I anti-hauled this deck. Look at the back of the box. Isn't that great? So this is one of those decks that I don't use very often, but I love it anyway. This deck, frick, I love this deck. I need to get this out and play with this more. It's historical and fun and like vintage and quirky. The faces on the characters in this deck are so great. And the personality in this deck is so great. It's not Marseille, it's Pips. But you can tell it's been influenced by those kinds of decks. And it's really great. Like, I've got reversals mixed in because that's how I was reading with it at the time that I read with it last. But it's really, really pretty. The cardstock, I think my chair is squeaking, I'm sorry. It even feels like an older deck. You know what I mean? Like, so it's got that personality, it's got that quirk. It's got a really great guidebook with some cool little things happening in there. I love this deck, but I don't reach for it very often. And in fact, I've got a couple decks that kind of fit into this category, feeling kind of old and vintagey and cool, but that I don't read with a ton, but I still love them. And I don't need more decks like that in my collection. I do love the ones that I have, and that's good enough for me. But this one totally scratched the itch. Once I kind of reminded myself what I had in this category, and I looked at this and I kind of sat with it, I was like, oh yeah, I'm good. I have the Tarot Musterberg. I don't need the Tarot de Luz. We're good here. Okay, that's all I've got for indie decks I'm not going to buy at the moment, okay? But we need to talk about decks I'm not going to pre-order. Let's get into it. So this one, I don't know if it's still in pre-order status now or if it should have been in the decks I'm not going to buy. I don't know. This is where I've put it. But we need to talk about the Mystic Palette Tarot by Ciro Marchetti. Okay. If you saw my October Hot Takes video, you will have seen me have an entire moment about this deck, where I completely went gaga after I didn't go gaga. Let me explain. I'm playing with a pen because I need to fidget apparently. So here's the story with the Mystic Palette Tarot. I was looking at it during my hot takes and I was like, I don't need this. And I told the whole story about how I love Ciro Marchetti decks, but I really only ever work with one at a time. And they always end up languishing and I was on this whole thing and I was like, I was good. I was not tempted. I was fine. I was appreciating the artwork. I was ready to move on. And then I scrolled down the page a little bit and I saw that you can get the Mystic Palette Tarot from Ciro in this gorgeous sepia toned version. When I tell you that I had the tab for that deck open on my computer for a couple of weeks, when I tell you that I would look at it on breaks at work, I would look at it when I was at home, I would do the math on the translation of how much it would cost me in Canadian dollars with shipping, which by the way, not cheap, but I would do all of that. And I was like, I need this. It's Ciro's artwork, but it's so different. It's like a step to the left because it's got that gorgeous sepia palette, which by the way, one of the things I love about Ciro's artwork is the vibrant color. So why this one was grabbing me the way it was, I can't quite say. It's really, really pretty. I feel like if there's one deck out of this entire list of the stuff I'm talking about in today's video that could tempt me to revisit it again, it's that one. But But my initial observations about the fact that I only ever reached for one Ciro Marchetti deck were valid. So I told myself I don't need it. And I don't feel particularly strong in this decision, in this particular moment, or have felt very strong since I made the decision. But I have made the decision because in practice, do I think I want it because it's just so gorgeous? Or do I think I want it because I'd use it? And if you know anything about my approach to amassing tarot decks, buying tarot decks, then you'll know that what's important to me is that I want to use it. I have a select few that are behind me on this shelf right here, including that Tarot of Musterberg and the Tarot de Tarocchi and the Tarot of the Alchemical Magnum Opus and the Rare Triumphs, and even Danny's Mystic Masters Tarot, which I almost exclusively use for magic work, okay? These are the decks that I don't want to part with, but that I don't have in regular rotation for one reason or another. And I don't need more decks in that category, right? And I asked myself, would this be a deck I would want to, that I think would sit alongside those? You know, would it be in that same category? And the answer I had was, no, I don't think I'd want to keep it even though I wasn't using it. So then I asked myself, would I use it? Would I use it? Would I use it? And I was asking myself, and like kind of torturing myself. Can you tell I'm still torturing myself? And then I was like, no, because I have this dang legacy of the divine. And let me be clear. It's in this bag. It's so soft and warm, this bag, because this is one of the first Peggy bags that she ever made me. You can tell because it's got these old braided cords from the very first round of bags she ever made. We had this small amount of these like satin braided cords that we'd found and used. Anyways, okay, I'm going to wax philosophical about this deck, and I don't want to because that's not what this video is about. But this dang deck is the reason why I can't have nice things. No, I'm sorry. This deck is the reason I can't seem to bond or gel with any new Ciro Marchetti decks as much as I want desperately to. And I mean, maybe that's the point. Maybe sometimes we're so bonded to decks, and that's a good thing. Like, it's a good thing that I love this deck enough, or I'm bonded to it enough that nothing can really compete. And I guess that's how some people probably feel about like the classic Rider-Waite-Smith, for example, and why some people never really stray from reading with the classic Rider-Waite-Smith, for example, or some other deck, or the Thoth deck, or whatnot. And I don't mean to say that I have the exact same relationship with this deck because it's not quite like that, but I've had this for a long time. And I've used it for a long time. So when I think in my head, I want to reach for a Ciro Marchetti deck, I can't not think about this deck. In spite of the fact that I hate that the court cards here, in fact, specifically the knights don't have people on them, just these stupid empty helmets. I'm not insulting your artwork, Ciro, I swear. If you watch this video, I swear I'm not picking on it, or at least I'm not meaning to. But there are things about this deck that aren't my favorite. Cards that I like better in his other decks. But for some reason, this is the deck I just cannot get out of my head when I think about working with a Ciro Marchetti deck. And trust me, I have tried. I have purchased Ciro Marchetti tarot decks thinking this will finally replace my tarot, Legacy of the Divine Tarot. I have purchased those decks. I have taken this deck, boxed it up, and put it high up in a shelf in my closet so that I would reach for the other one. And do you know what happened? I still missed this deck. This was the one I still wanted. I had to pull it back out of store. I don't understand, but I just can't. I just can't with another Ciro deck, and I want it, but I don't need it. And I'm not going to end up using it, I don't think. I could see myself caving on it, though, and trying anyways, because I'm stubborn like that, and I feel like it's the sepia tones, though, it's so pretty. Somebody else buy it and love it, and tell me how much you love it, and you use it so that I don't know, I can live vicariously through you, because it's not going to get the love in my collection as much as I want to give it all the love. I literally can't stop talking. It's going to be fun to edit later. Whee! Probably the caffeinated Coke I'm having at, what time is it? 11 o'clock at night. It's an hour past my bedtime. This is how you know I love YouTube, because I stay up past my bedtime to make videos. I guess that's a good sign. I just threw my pen. No. Okay. Focus, Lisa. We can do it. Okay. Another deck I've decided I'm not going to pre-order, but I really thought about it, and that is the Tarot V. Now, last year I think it is, or somewhere before, this same publisher / artist did the Tarot Z, and it's a zombie tarot. The Tarot V is a vampire tarot. Vampires are definitely more my thing than zombies, technically. And I have a zombie tarot I love. But vampire stuff, I'm all about the vampire stuff. I love me some Twilight novels, don't judge. And I love me some vampire romance. I love me some vampires. I do. But I think the Tarot V is probably a little too dark for me. At the end of the day, it's probably going to be too dark for me. And I have a really exciting vampire deck that I don't think anything's going to be able to compete with. At the time I'm filming this, I have just begun to study this deck, and I'm real excited already. So I'm not going to get into it because I'm probably going to talk about it at length in my October show and tell, but I have Robert M. Place's Vampire Tarot. It's still in order. Okay. I could go on and on and on about Robert M. Place and his mind, which I think is it's brilliant. But I'm so excited that I have this deck. And can we talk about the backings? Now this is a vampire deck with some teeth. And the funny thing about that pun is I thought of the wording before I realized it was a pun, and then I had to say it anyways because it's great. But it does. This has so much substance. And I'm going to try not to go on and on and on, but just to say that now that I am getting to know this particular deck, I just want to sit and stare at it now. I don't think any other vampire deck is going to cut it. Let's just leave it there. I am so excited about the Vampire Tarot by Robert M. Place that it was actually, once I started digging into the book for this deck and starting to study it and prepare to use it, I realized there's not going to be another Vampire Tarot for me. It's not going to happen. Now, I'm very sorry. I should have led with this. This is out of print. I hope that this gets reprinted at some point, and I hope that someday it's more readily available. But for right now, it's out of print, and I'm very sorry. But I'm really excited about it. Okay, the other deck, this is actually technically a threefer. Okay, so I have decided I am not going to pre-order the new standalone decks that are coming out of the Illustrated Herbiary, Crystallary, and Bestiary. I did have the Illustrated Herbiary, but if you haven't seen them, beautiful, stunning artwork. But what I realized is that I already have a plant deck that I like that I've already talked about, the Plant Spirit Oracle. I already have an animal deck that I love, which I talked about, the Animal Kin Oracle. And I do have a crystal deck that, while I feel like there's other crystal decks that exist or that will exist in the future that I could theoretically like better, I do have my Crystals the Stone deck. This is a really inexpensive mass market, right? Yeah, this is published by Chronicle Books. This is crazy affordable for how lovely it is, but it's just really beautiful crystals. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous photos, uncluttered on the front. And then on the back, there's all this information about the crystal. I have used this deck a ton for magical work, and I've used it a bunch when I've been wanting to work with a particular crystal's energy that I don't have in my collection, or I just want to get to know a crystal better. I'll use this deck. But because I have a crystal deck, I have an animal deck, and I have a plant deck, all of which I like, I don't need the Illustrated Herbiary, Crystallary, and Bestiary. I'm good. But they look really pretty, and if you were disappointed by the cardstock of the original, because the original was actually a pop-out deck that you could get that came in the back of the book. You'd have to like punch out the cards or whatever. So it was really crappy cardstock. And then they reissued it, and you could get these deluxe sets that had the full-size book, hardbound book, really nice, and a bigger version of the deck. At least for, I know they did that for the herbiary. And now they're releasing them all as standalone decks. So you get like a nice boxed deck, just the deck, which I'm assuming has a deck-sized guidebook with it. So it's really great that they're releasing them in that format, because I know a lot of people have really enjoyed or loved the look of those decks, but just the form factor, the production quality, whatever, wasn't what they wanted. So it's neat that they're coming out that way, but I don't need to pre-order them. I did consider it, though. This video is going to be really long because I can't shut up. All right. I guess I'm not supposed to shut up. It's my video. I can make it long if I want to. Pep talk. Self-pep talk. That's what that was. All right. Let's talk about Kickstarter decks I've decided not to back. Again, I'm trying to pick things that I was tempted by. So the first of these is it just called the Dolphin Tarot? Yeah, it looks like it's just called the Dolphin Tarot. This real cute. I am a sucker for cute, and this has all of the bright colors, and it gives me like Lisa Frank vibes. Real cute. Was real close to pressing the back button. And then I was like, Lisa, no, you don't need it just because it's cute. Like, she wants it just because it's cute. She does. She really wants it just because it's cute. But you don't need it just because it's cute. You have other decks that are cute. So the way I talked myself out of backing this one is by reminding myself of the Adorables Bumbleberry Hollows Tarot, which I legitimately backed just because it's cute. Now, I love this, but I don't have room for a ton of stuff to back just because it's cute. Because this is cute. It's really cute, but it's a pip deck. And it survives in my collection solely on its cuteness. I pretty much read this deck in a rote way, meaning when I pull the Three of Pentacles, I'm not really thinking about the fact that there are 3 apple pies on the card. I'm like, it's the Three of Pentacles. The Three of Pentacles is like collaboration and blah, 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 right? So I go off of whatever I'm stirred by intuitively in that moment based on what I know about the Three of Pentacles, but I'm not looking at this artwork going, this is like the best rendition of the Ace of Swords I've ever seen, or the best Two of Swords. It really shows what the Two of Swords mean. No. This is like a really cute deck that I use in conjunction with my existing tarot knowledge. It's cute. I bought it because it was cute. I don't need another deck like that. I do still love this one, but I don't need another one that's in that space for me. I really don't. So I didn't back the Dolphin Tarot, but I was tempted because it's real darn cute. And the second one, this is probably the one that's tempted me the most. And this is another one I think on this list where once it comes out and I see walkthroughs of it, I could totally see myself backpedaling, potentially. But it is the Rosebud Tarot. So you can definitely see my reaction to this in my hot takes, as with most of the things I'm talking about today. If you find the right hot takes, I'm sure you'll find my initial reactions to them. But this one, I don't know exactly what it is. Something about the Rosebud theme, something about the softness I feel like that's in the deck, something about the quirky vintage collage. There's something about this that captures my imagination. I think it reminds me of other decks that have made me feel the same way, that I don't own, that have that layered collagey look. Decks that I feel like I want to love more than I do, but there are quite a few decks in this category that have kind of tempted me. I don't use a lot of decks like that, and I was trying to think, what do I have in my collection that can scratch the itch? Because I really need to scratch this itch or I'm going to back this deck right now. So I went to my racks and I pulled down my Moonchild Tarot. This has that kind of, a little bit of it. It's got a little bit of that kind of vintagey collage feel, but I love the way that the collage is done in this deck. You get a little bit of the vintage feel, you get that layered feel. But this deck just feels really rich to me. And I've had more time to kind of get to know and work with this deck. I love the physical qualities of this deck, like the tactile experience of this deck. But it definitely scratches the itch that the Rosebud Tarot was itching. Itching? Yeah, I don't know how to use that. I don't know how to say that, but it just, yeah, this like does it for me, right? This does it for me. So, but I also, while I love working with this deck, I don't work with it a ton. But again, that's true of most of my collection, right? Because I do have a lot of decks and I rotate them. I'm lucky if I work with a deck a week a year, right? But I have this. I love this. I have this. I love this. So I don't need the Rosebud Tarot. But I'm going to be watching some walkthroughs, and I might change my mind. That's what I'm going to say about that. Finally, I haven't used this category in a while, but let's talk for a moment about out-of-print insanity. Now, I've used this category a couple times in my anti-hauls. This is like my reminder to you that you don't have to go crazy for a deck because you're worried that you'll be sad if you never get it. I have had decks that were out of print sit on my wish list for literally years before somehow they found their way into my life. Or they never have. Classic version, here's a good example. The Idiosyncra deck by Jessica Bott. Man, I was hunting Etsy for that deck. I was hunting trade groups for that deck. I wanted that deck so bad. But in my mind, there's a point at which I don't want to there's a point at which there's like a threshold. I don't want to pass when it comes to paying for an experience of a deck. Because one of the things I've learned, partly through this series and just partly in general through my practice, is that there's almost always another deck that will fill the same need for me, even if it's not exactly the same experience. And so I've learned that like I don't need to, and nor have I ever yet paid like insane prices for an out of print deck. I just don't need to. And in my practice, I don't need to. This is not at all a value judgment on other people who choose to. But the out of print insanity section, when a deck comes to mind that I feel like it could be tempting for myself or for other people to jump on a really insane price because of the fear of not ever being able to get their hands on it, I like to talk about that. And the deck that is coming to mind for me right now is a deck that I have. And this is not a taunt at all. I swear to God it's not. But I've been seeing a lot of people talking about this deck and talking about just being devastated that they can't get it. And that is the Healing Waves Tarot. This is a beautiful deck. I'm not going to lie. I am really, really happy that I backed this deck. But I've seen some talk from people who genuinely feel like, you know, they really are super sad that they missed out this deck. Now, this one's just been shipped to people that backed it on Indiegogo, and the creator of this deck was clear from the beginning that they were not planning to do a reprint. Now, they can always change their mind. You never know. Because you never know. This is the most important thing to me, I think, in my mind. You never know. If a publisher approaches this person and says, hey, we want to publish it and you don't have to do any of the work and like you'll just make money. I don't know how that works. I'm making this up. I literally have no idea. But let's say that happens. This could come out. You never know. So the creator said, no, they're not going to put any more out. And I feel like the temptation is going to be really, 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 really strong when some of these decks inevitably end up on eBay or on trade groups or sell groups or on Facebook or wherever for people who ordered it and decided they didn't really get along with it and they're going to rehome it. They're going to throw it up on Etsy or eBay or wherever. And people are going to be tempted to pay insane prices for this because there was already, before these even shipped, some of them even shipped, there was some really insane prices being asked for this deck already. And I guess I just want to remind you guys, because if I had not backed this deck, there is another, and I've talked about this already, but I'm going to talk about it again. There's quite a few other actually ocean-themed tarot decks, but there's another one that I feel like covers a lot of the same territory that this deck covers. The art style is different, but I think it's really, really, really well done. I've backed it too. I will share it with you when I have it in my hands, but it is called the Ocean Tarot. I will have a link to it down below. And I think what that reminded me of is that sometimes there's something we really, 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 really want, and then we see it go up for some insane price and we're tempted by that. But then what happens if you do buy this for a really insane price? Let's say one goes up on eBay, it goes crazy high price, and you buy it at that really, really insane price. And then the next day, the very next day, you find out that this is coming out on the mass market and you're going to be able to get it in like 6 months for like $25. Would you be sad that you spent all of that money on the indie deck? And this is what I've said before on my channel, and I'll say it again. If the answer to that question is yes, if you bought this today at an insane price, and then tomorrow you'd be super sad if you found out it was coming out mass market because you'd feel like you wasted your money, if that's the boat that you're in, don't jump on it. If you feel good about it, if you're like, even if it got reprinted tomorrow, I'm still super glad I spent the money, it's your money to spend, you do you. But I'm just telling you, this is something I've kind of talked myself through over and over again. And I will tell you, it has happened to me multiple times where I've been lusting after a particular deck that was out of print, and I was tempted to pay a pretty high price for it on eBay because I was worried I wouldn't be able to get it. And then I stumbled across one in a trade, or I found out it was being mass market published, or I found out it was being reprinted multiple times. A good example is Robert M. Place's Buddha Tarot. I know that one was going for insane prices for a while. It's now coming out mass market. The Dark Goddess Tarot, when it went out of print initially, I saw a couple of those go for really, really high prices. It's out mass market now. Yes, the mass market versions are usually not identical to the independent version. And for a collector, that will matter. And if you're a collector, like again, this is not a judgment. This is just me talking through something I feel I've experienced and that I've learned and that's been helpful to me. But I've also learned that if I wait long enough after that immediate desire to acquire the thing, that I almost always find that I don't really want it as badly as I thought I did. And then after some time has passed, there's new things to be excited about, new things to lust after, and I can let that thing go. There are a couple things that I've been incredibly blessed and incredibly lucky to have done that with that have still somehow managed to find their way to me, typically through the generosity of somebody else. And I'm in a really unique and blessed position to have had that experience. I'm not trying to make light of that. That's the kind of experience that I know is not available to everybody. And I'm so, so grateful for those opportunities when they've happened. but that doesn't mean that I would have paid an insane price for that thing. I guess the thing I'm trying to say is that I've learned that no matter how intense that feeling is of I must have this right now, you might find that the longer you sit with that feeling and the longer you let it be okay to be in that feeling and not do anything about it right away, you might find that feeling dissipates and that you don't really need that thing. I remind myself pretty regularly that at the end of the day, these are pieces of cardboard or paper or cardstock, however you want to look at it. They're really pretty pieces of cardstock, and I love and enjoy the things that I have. But I also remind myself that it's still just paper. And so there's I guess a mental block for me in spending more than a certain amount on paper. I've spent more on unique embodiments of tarot, such as tarot tiles, or I backed the Charmcast tarot, which is, I think, going to be to me soonish, if it's not already. It's not to me yet at the time I'm filming this video, but I think it's due soon-ish. And those I spent more on than I would spend on a deck of cards because they're made out of an entirely different material and they required a different kind of labor and that sort of thing. But in general, I have sort of an internal threshold where I typically don't spend more. And it's not a static number. It's not like I go, well, I'll never spend more than 100 because I have exchange rate and shipping and things that happen to me all the time. And I have spent more than $100 on a deck. But there's certainly a place at which I start to feel uncomfortable with how much I'm spending. And so when I'm talking about out-of-print decks, and the temptation for some of you may be really strong to go a little crazy for something that you know you can't get because that part of you that wants it is also wanting it maybe partly because you can't get it. And I just want to insert some sanity into the conversation and go, that's completely fine. And if you are comfortable with that, that's great. Don't feel bad about it. You should enjoy it. You should do the thing. And you only live once, YOLO. Is that literally what it means? You only live once. YOLO has become such slang that for a second I didn't realize those two things were the same thing. Anyways, YOLO, like, you do you and you have fun and you enjoy the things that you enjoy, and that's totally fine. I just wanted to insert a bit of my process and my thinking around that sort of thing because I get a little worried sometimes in general that maybe somebody newer to the experience of amassing tarot who's really enjoying it might find themselves in that space of feeling a lot of internal pressure to go a little crazy. And you don't have to. You can, and if you do, enjoy it. But you don't have to. And I guess I just wanted to give that alternate viewpoint. But I just wanted to say thank you guys so much for hanging out with me here. I love making these videos. I genuinely appreciate the fact that you take any of your time and spend it here on this channel. It means so much. You putting your eyeballs on this space is why I do what I do. So thank you so much. As always, if you enjoyed this video or you found value in it, don't forget to click the like button, subscribe if you're new here, and don't forget to click that little notification bell so you're notified of all my future videos. And remember, if you want to see even more content from me, behind the scenes content from me, all kinds of extra stuff, then check out Unicorn Fam channel membership. You can see details all about that if you click the join button, which should be right next to the subscribe button down below. And thank you, as always, to all of my channel members. You guys help make this even more possible, and I just genuinely appreciate all of your support. And just by watching these videos, you guys give me so much. You just don't know. So thank you all so much, and may your magic always shine from the inside out. Bye, guys.